All right, well, Boeing shares are again under pressure today following the FAA's decision to ground Boeing 737 MAX planes. The Boeing model was grounded by international aviation authorities following the deadly Ethiopian Airlines crash Sunday that marked the model's second lethal crash in under 6 months. The FAA, however, initially stood by Boeing 737 MAX planes, reiterating their airworthiness, only to reverse course yesterday, citing data that showed flight similarities with the Lion Air crash in Indonesia involving the same Boeing model 5 months ago. Joining us for more on the question of this plane's safety is former pilot and airplane crash investigator Keith Makey. Keith, I got to ask you first, the FAA said new flight data, including altitude data, showed roller coaster-like changes were behind the agency's decision to change its mind on this. But at least some of that data was already known since Monday. So what do you make of the FAA's change of heart here?
Well, I think, Zach, that it's more a case of doing something prudent and getting us away from discussing whether or not the airplane should be grounded or not. They made that option easy. They just grounded them all. And now we can stop talking about that and we can concentrate on determining what, if anything, is wrong with the airplane or the training system and how do we fix it and get the thing back in the air so we can get that stock up.
I mean, it's an interesting point that you raised there. I mean, in your mind, what do you think is wrong with it? We've already seen a lot of people point to this anti-stalling technique and software that pushes the plane's nose down that pilots may not have been aware of. Is that what you think is the issue here, too?
I think it'll certainly be visited. I think we're going to have to bring that into the pilot training curriculum. Apparently, it is not there now. Boeing's idea was that pilots didn't even know that the system was on board the aircraft because it would work automatically. We'll see how that interfaces with what we've discovered here. Now, the progress that we've made is we've finally gotten the flight data recorder and the voice recorder to somewhere where they can be read. Apparently, they're now in Paris at the French Aviation Agency, where they do have the capability of decoding them. And once we get that information, the investigators will be able to reconstruct the flight path of the aircraft and get a pretty good idea of what happened. They'll hear the cockpit conversations. They'll be able to see the control positions. They'll be able to see whether or not the autopilot was engaged while those altitude excursions were taking place. They'll also perhaps be able to resolve why in the Ethiopian crash, the airplane just continued to accelerate without ever slowing until Keith, it went off the radar track.
Keith, you mentioned U.S. authorities not being able to look into that black box recorder that, of course, is now in France. Is it a slap in the face to the U.S. over people thinking
No, you must have misunderstood. I didn't say that. It had to go somewhere where it could be read. It could have been taken to Seattle. But the point is that it stayed in Ethiopia for a couple of days without being sent anywhere. The quicker that data gets to somebody who can use the information, the quicker we can get some reasoning as to why the aircraft crashed.
Keith, I'm wondering if you're at all concerned that maybe going back to those sensors that we were talking about a little earlier, I'm wondering if you're at all concerned that perhaps Boeing wasn't providing crews the necessary information about some of those systems and also some of the hazards and some of the risks and the varying conditions.
Well, the suggestion has been made by people who fly the airplane that the operations manual is not what they consider accurate, that it doesn't have sufficient information. And we know that that MCAS system was not included in the manual. In fact, American Airlines pilots had no idea it was even there. So I think that that's a black eye on Boeing that should have been there. But their goal is to make this aircraft as simple to operate as possible. And their philosophy was they didn't want to overload crews with information that they didn't need. Now, we'll see how the jury rules on that one, won't we?
I guess so. Keith Makey, thanks so much for joining us. We'll have to keep you in the loop as this develops. Thanks so much for joining us.
You're very welcome, Zach. Take care.
You too.